Hello, my name is Aaron Stoller.
Hey, Aaron, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad to have you on.
Nice to be here.
All right, so as we jump in, the first thing I wanted to ask you from a broad picture elevator pitch style, what exactly is an ecological and sustainability consultant?
It means a lot of different things depending upon what type of consulting firm you work for. Consultants can do a wide variety of things from your everyday permitting and compliance to helping large industries meet sustainability goals, their conservation ambitions. Um, you are beholden to what the clients want you to do, but as a scientist, you also have the ability to help the client understand what is the best course of action. And so in my career at Exponent, I am helping my clients find the most sustainable actions to meet regulatory and public demands in this changing world.
What a good summary. And so, diving a little deeper, what's a typical day look like for you?
It varies a lot. Um, Most of the time, I think I'm just sitting behind a computer, either working on today, it's been GIS, sometimes it'll be report writing, sometimes it'll be LinkedIn marketing. Um, you're as a consultant in this firm, they say it's a seller doer atmosphere, meaning that you are responsible for both doing the work as well as selling yourself. And in my role, I spent a lot of time marketing myself, trying to find new clients. And it is definitely awkward, but it's
Mm.
also rewarding when you finally find somebody that's willing to talk to you and like explain to you their needs. And I don't know if I'm always able to help out with people's needs, but I love giving it a try. And if nothing else, I love learning about other businesses. And like, yeah, last week was all for me. It was all just marketing and business development. This week, it's all going to be report writing. And then I get to travel a lot too. So there'll be times when I don't see my house for a couple weeks because I'm doing out. Last month, I was out in Wyoming doing field work, doing some education and outreach. Before that, I was in Illinois doing some education and outreach, all for clients. So it really just depends on the job and what the client wants. But the majority of my time is probably spent behind a computer.
Okay, but it does sound like there's some variety sprinkled in terms of what you get to do. Some that's more mindfully taxing and maybe some that's a little more physically taxing. So,
Yeah, I was yelling at my computer this morning, and I'm not even ashamed to say it.
don't we all? I swear our computer knows it's Monday too. Um, so I do want to follow up for a second because the aspect of marketing yourself and bringing in your own clients is something that my audience might not be aware of at all when they think about consulting. So can you speak more to that? And is that a norm when you're a consultant for someone that you have to bring in your own clients?
Well, I'll start with that last question first. No, not necessarily. It becomes more of a norm if you stick in consulting and you get up into the upper parts, like the upper parts of a company.
Mm,
Most consultants that start off at the lower levels, they're just handed projects. I started off somewhere in mid level for this company, and so there was an expectation that I do bring in some projects, and that's really fine because I had spent a lot of time my previous career sort of selling myself as well inside the company. Um, but is it a challenge to sell? I think it's a challenge for anyone to sell themselves, period. I mean, this is something that I talk a lot to students about with resume writing. Like, it is probably the most awkward and challenging thing that an adult has to do is to sell themselves and make themselves feel like they're worth enough to really sell themselves to somebody. Um, and usually what I tell people is you just have to suck it up and do it until you receive results, and then you can lay low for a little bit. But the reality is that in academia, where most people start, undergraduate,
Mhm.
or if they go to graduate school, you're already selling yourself in the form of grants. Like you already have to sell your ideas to somebody who wants to fund it, and that's the challenge that most students meet head on first. Selling yourself to clients is actually easier than selling yourself to a technical audience,
Mhm.
because you know that you know your stuff, your area of expertise, and they know that you know your area of expertise. The differential selling point is you also have to know how to speak their language, because a lot of times when you're
Mm.
not proposing or selling yourself to a technical audience, you're selling yourself to this, or you're selling yourself to an audience that's doesn't have your technicalities, your area of expertise. You have to be able to speak their language, and so
Mhm.
that's one of the more challenging things to do in that seller doer mindset of consulting, is to know how to talk to a wide variety of scientists and get outside of the bubble that we all create for ourselves in undergraduate and then in graduate school.
Mm. This is really fruitful because sometimes people think about as you progress through the academic journey, like if you go on to get your PhD, that you've become such a specialist that you can only sell to other specialists like you. And
Yeah.
so this is an opportunity to keep your breadth and your interest, especially if you're someone who is interdisciplinary or intradisciplinary and like a lot of things and don't want to settle for just one. It sounds like you're getting some of that variety. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it really is. It gives you the chance to do what most graduate students want to do, which is broaden instead of
Mm.
specialize. But if you really want to broaden yourself, you have to be prepared for the challenges associated with broadening yourself. And that means genuinely learning and listening to others about what their needs are, and trying your best to understand how different fields of science think, and
Mm.
talk. In my experience, I've had to deal a lot with engineers, and I was an engineering major for a semester in college, and I thought I knew how to talk with engineers because they were my friends. And then when I got into a business where I actually was surrounded entirely by engineers, um, and I'm still entirely surrounded by engineers. It's a very different way of thinking.
Mhm.
Statistics kind of goes not out the window, but it's a very different mindset when you're trying to do like experimental designs. It's a very different mindset when you're trying to find a solution to a problem that might exist over the long term versus the short term. And so you learn how to talk with people. And it's not that you have to change your own way of thinking, it's that you have to understand why you think the way that you do, and why others may think differently.
Hmm. What a great point. And so, to help our listeners have that full picture, can you give us something at two ends of a spectrum in terms of projects? So, how different is one client from another, or one project from another for you?
Oh yeah. So in Exponent, where I currently work, um, there is what's called proactive and reactive work. And this is not a term that I knew of when I was in undergraduate, so I wouldn't expect most of your coachees. I don't know what we call them,
Yep,
to know it.
coaches.
Coachees.
Yep.
Um, so proactive work is where you go out and you help a client address a problem before it happens. Reactive work is once a problem happens and it hits the courtroom, you need to help a client defend themselves.
Hmm.
Um, and so those are the two spectrums that my consulting firm works on. Reactive work usually pays far more than proactive work. And that's not saying anything about my firm. It's just saying something about the state of our society, where
Hmm.
we generally don't want to pay a whole lot to fix problems that don't exist, but we're willing to throw a lot of money once the problems happen.
Hmm.
So in my position, I'm trying to do a lot more proactive work, which is challenging because a lot of people don't want to pay for it. But once you can convince them through, again, thinking in terms of their language, in terms of return on investment, in terms of social license to operate and marketing, these are all terms that I don't expect any undergraduate to really learn. But once you start to understand how other people in business talk, you learn how to sell yourself to them and how to convince them that proactive work can save them X amount of dollars at the end of the
Hmm.
day.
Absolutely. Oh, this is hitting really close to home because I started out really focused in invasive biology, right? So thinking about crayfish invasions in my case. And that is quite literally proactive is the only way to beat these things. The idea of removing something after it's already invaded is very, very, very difficult and expensive. And so I was kind of over that. And so I switched over to conservation biology, which is a mix of both proactive and reactive. And so it's intriguing to see it in another context of how it's applied. So you work, it sounds like predominantly with engineers. So what type of problems are they trying to prevent or address?
So the firm that I work at is extremely broad. We are not an
Mm.
environmental only consulting firm. In fact, that was a later addition to the firm. The firm used to be called failure analysis, actually. They're the ones that get called in after something dramatic happens. My firm is usually called in for any type of response to major disasters.
Mm.
That's been historically what they've done, and so when buildings collapse or when earthquakes cause something bad to happen, or when there's an oil spill of some variety, this firm gets called in a lot, and a lot of the people that get involved with this are mechanical engineers, electrical engineers. They do analysis on a variety of different types of collisions, like automobile collisions. If a boat overturns, we have engineers to analyze what went wrong. And so, oftentimes, the way that I describe engineers, not just in this company, but all throughout, is they are problem fixers. They have a
Mm.
problem, and they try to fix it as much as possible or identify what went wrong to the best of their ability. And then if they're also paid to fix it, then they'll intervene and they'll fix it up. Um, to a large extent, environmental scientists in the company do the same thing, because really that's reactive work. We wouldn't call ourselves engineers. We call ourselves environmental scientists. For a very long time, I really didn't know that engineers did not consider themselves scientists.
Mm.
Some do, right? If you talk to some engineers, they will say, yeah, I'm a scientist. Most will say, I'm an engineer, not a scientist. And to me, I never really understood why an engineer is not a scientist. And a lot of it has to do with the process of picking apart a problem. I am very
Mm.
hypothesis and observation forward. I observe something, I generate a series of hypotheses that I want to test to figure out what is actually happening. Engineers go through a similar process, but their thinking about hypothesis is a little bit different. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't entirely understand it. I just know that they approach problems differently.
Mm. Yeah, I've noticed, at least in some of the clients that I've worked with that are mechanical engineers versus an ecologist, for example. Yeah, you're right. Like the ecologists are thinking about, I observed something. Why might that be? And then they have these various hypotheses that they could test. The engineers that I've worked with, it's, oh, we have this thing or we have this problem, what are some options? And they just go through the trial and error of
Yeah.
trying various things, usually starting with the most efficient or the cheapest. And then if that works, great. So there's, in that sense, a little less comparison at that stage. It's just, did that solve the problem or did it not? And again, I would love if some folks listening that are engineers could drop some comments from your perspective of how you define yourself. and how you tackle problems. Because I like this debate. Are you a scientist or are you just engineer? But what a deep philosophical question we just touched on so early in our conversation, Aaron. I
I would
love it.
also love to know what other people think, because I genuinely think that engineers are also scientists. A lot of
Hmm.
them just don't want to call themselves scientists, and I don't really understand why. I am like classically trained in scientific thinking, in Western scientific thinking, the hypothetico-deductive approach, and I, like everybody else, if I get in my car and it doesn't start, I don't immediately try to like hammer on the engine and fix it. I run through a series of observations and hypotheses about what's going on. Do I have gas in my tank? Did I get my oil changed recently? Right. I go through all of these observations. I make hypotheses, and then I implement some change to fix the problem. And to me, that's a scientist. And
Hmm.
so, in that sense, political scientists, computer scientists, like anthropologists, they're all scientists. So I don't really
Hmm.
understand the difference. But if somebody doesn't want to call themselves a scientist, that's on them. They can call themselves whatever they want.
That's true. That is true. But yeah, I think a scientist is more of a mindset than anything. It's how you
Yeah.
think about problems, how you think about solutions. So, well, wonderful. So, zooming back into your day to day, what do you most enjoy about your work?
As a scientist, the only thing that I ever want in life is to be challenged to think of new ideas and to learn new concepts. As long as wherever I'm working and whoever I'm working for challenges me, I'm fine with that. And that's my most favorite thing on a day-to-day basis, is when I get challenged to learn something new. When a client comes to me and says, I need to get this done. Do you know how to do it? And I say, no, but I think I understand the pathway to doing it. Let me see if I can assemble a team of scientists to do this, because none of us work in isolation, right?
Mhm.
There's no point in me like reinventing the wheel to learn new things. I'm surrounded by extraordinarily smart and talented scientists and engineers, or both, depending upon what they want to call themselves. And so, like for me, my most favorite exciting thing is gathering up the expertise, having them interact with each other, teaching me new things, and then I progress from there. I expand my skill set. I gain a little bit more confidence in my thinking and what I do, and I truly love that. Like that's more philosophically what I enjoy. Like physically, I still love getting out in the field, right? I mean, if I have an opportunity to be out in the field, that's great. I've never wanted to stop doing that. I don't want to do it all the time. I've hit this really nice place where I can work in the field when I need to, and I generally work from home the rest of the time, and I have fur and feather babies that I can take care of at home, and that make me smile. But then I'll occasionally just go out to Wyoming for a week and do field work, and that's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, I feel the same. What does your fieldwork look like?
That really depends. If I am doing work on a biodiversity survey, it might mean that I am standing in the middle of gigantic Phragmites and goldenrod and surveying plants. If I'm doing education and outreach, it might mean that I'm interfacing with the local community college, guest lecturing at a class, bringing students to the field and showing them how to do restoration ecology, what restoration ecology even means. Um, Sometimes it'll just be going to conferences and then taking side trips with people to explore new
Mm.
areas. It could be a variety of things.
Oh, that's amazing. I have to admit, it's the thing that I miss the most about being outside of my previous position at a university, now running my own thing where most of my stuff is online. And so I just have to be really intentional to get out there. And so I volunteer with the National Park Service doing turtle surveys. I'm not great with plant ID, but learning. And I go out and help my local chapters. My husband is a fish biologist, so anytime I can get out on the boat and help him with the lake sturgeon, I just love that stuff. And it makes you feel, it just puts your science into reality. Like you can feel and see what you're impacting with the work you're doing on the computer. And it's just really powerful.
Yeah.
So, what about the flip side? Every job has its downsides. So, what's the less appealing aspects of your work?
I would say that the less appealing side of my work is dealing with accounting. I'm a
Mm.
scientist. I do like numbers, but not those numbers. Um, I don't, I hire somebody else to do my taxes for me because I don't like accounting. Um, when you work for private entities, you have to account for yourself. You have to account for every dime that you spend. You have to submit receipts for everything. You have to file all the correct paperwork, make sure all the contracts are signed properly. I don't want to be doing that, right? And
Hmm.
and to be fair, we have very helpful and talented administration staff that help out with that. They can't do everything for you. I still have to do
Hmm.
some stuff. And so it's not like I complain about it because I know that it could be a lot worse without the administrative support staff. I just don't want to be doing it.
Hmm. Yep, I hear you. And it's for me, it's like, oh shoot, I forgot to record my mileage for the latest trip to input into, in my case, QuickBooks. In your case, submitting that to your administrative staff.
Yeah.
But
I'm
yeah,
pretty
I
sure
hear
that
you.
Indeed.com has an advertisement running right now that says exactly that same thing. It like cuts away to a kayak company that's kayaking, and they're like, "You started a kayak company because you loved kayaking and teaching people how to kayak, not because you wanted to be an accountant." Indeed.com can help you find an accountant. This podcast is not sponsored by any company called Indeed.com, but
Yep. Oh, I love it. So true. But I think these are the aspects in every career you think about. As a student, you didn't even think about that aspect, and then you're in it, and you're like, "Oh, wow, didn't see that coming." But it seems such now that you're in it, well, it's logical. I have to do it. But wonderful.
and
So,
I do tell students, if you can, take like microeconomics in college
mm,
just to give yourself some basic understanding of why you need to do the accounting. You don't have to know how to do the accounting, but having some basic understanding of how economics works so that you don't complain when you have to do the accounting
mhm.
goes a long way.
Not to mention, I can imagine when you're marketing to clients, currency is part of their what they value, right? So understanding the numbers, understanding the importance, how to communicate it, probably helps from that standpoint too.
Absolutely.
So let's go back in time a little bit. So, what is the very first career you ever pictured for yourself? Like, go back to early childhood if we can remember that far back.
I want to be an astronaut. I think
Yeah.
that the actual like the most generic progression that can happen is that you first discover dinosaurs and you want to be an archaeologist. Then you discover outer space and you want to be an astronaut. Um, then you start taking classes that are more specialized in school and you're like, I want to be a biologist. I want to be a marine biologist. I want to be a physicist, right? And so I think the first career I ever wanted to be, I probably wanted to be an astronaut.
Hmm. Love it. So, you're clearly not an astronaut, at least not yet. And so, how did that shift over time? So, you mentioned like for some people it could shift to biology or marine biology specifically. How did it shift over the various milestones of your career to where you sit today?
I am going to take you fast track to the end of high school, and I needed a job. I had been working odd jobs. I worked at Starbucks for a little bit. Not as sorry, I worked at Starbucks in college. I worked for my father's business for a while, so I kind of gained this work ethic, and I knew that I didn't want to work for my father for the rest of my life. So I wanted to get a different job, and a friend of mine Had a father who worked at marine aquaculture facility, and they needed somebody to clean up poop all day long. And I said, sure, why not? And I started working at this marine aquaculture facility in Baltimore. And I didn't think that it was really going to be my career. I don't think anybody wants to be cleaning up, fish poop for the rest of their life. But I did enjoy myself, and I did get to see and experience new things. When I got to college, I wasn't trying to be a marine biologist or an environmental scientist, or I wasn't trying to do any of that. I actually changed my major 6 times in college. I didn't know what I wanted to do. My parents were very encouraging for me to just try things that I enjoyed and that I found interesting. They didn't put any pressure on me to graduate in 4 years. I did. So that's going to be a spoiler alert. I did graduate in 4 years, but then nobody put pressure on me except for the college guidance counselors. And I politely told them, thanks, I appreciate your advice, but why would you want me to get out in 4 years when you get more money from me if I don't? And they were like, that's reasonable. So I did my own thing. I was a microbiology major for a while, and then I changed up to computer science, realized I didn't like coding 100% of the time, which is basically what it was when I was in college. And then I switched up to art. My mother is a graphic designer. I always kind of had art in me. And I decided I liked it more as a hobby than as a career. I changed my major to physics, thought for sure that I was going to be a physics major, even got an internship at NASA, was really excited about it. And then after the internship, I realized how much I did not like physics. I still hung out with like an astronomy minor for a little bit because I do still to this day love staring at the stars and learning about new research in astrophysics. In the last semester of my junior year, I happened to take a general education requirement course in environmental science. And I had still been working. I've been working cleaning up fish poop at this marine aquaculture facility to this day because it just gave me some money, right, to pay bills. And I took this course, and all of a sudden, the teacher, Dr. Sandy Parker, I'll never forget him, he changed my mind. Like that first day, I just was like, oh, it all makes sense. Everything I've been doing to this point just kind of locked into place. It was one of those aha moments. And I went up to him after class and I said, I need to change my major for this. And he brought me into another faculty's office, got me integrated into a research lab where I was doing environmental science because I had already been doing some environmental science anyway. And so they were like, sure, join our lab and see what you can do. And I never looked back. There was some concern that I couldn't graduate in 4 years. Again, that wasn't my concern. It was some of my counselors' concerns. As it turns out, environmental science is such an integrative field that all of the classes that I had taken to that date, almost all of them counted towards my environmental science degree. I just had to take a few of the lower requirements, which was always amusing, a senior taking like these core requirements, which with freshmen and sophomores, but I didn't mind it. I was learning so much and I got to go out in the field. I got an internship, what's called an REU or research experience for undergraduates internship working for a professor at the University of Pittsburgh. So I spent a summer of between my junior and senior year out in the middle of Northwest Pennsylvania doing aquatic ecology. And I fell in love with it. I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. And so that's how the career transitioned. I haven't lost the passion for all of those other things. I already talked about how I'm working with engineers. I respect engineers. I love working with them. I don't know their science as well as they do, of course, but I know enough about engineering to talk with them, to understand them. The physics I still use to this day because everything is physics, right? You talk about hydrology, it's physics. You talk
Mhm.
about the movement of energy and nutrients in the environment, that's physics. Um, the art, I still integrate art into almost every project that I do. I think that art is such a powerful means of communicating with people, no matter
Mm.
what their background. Um, it all kind of meshes together, and I'm able to experiment with so many different fields and talk sensibly about all of them as well.
Oh, that's incredible. I can't tell you how powerful that story is because of how many students come to me, one, panicking on what they should major in,
Yeah.
and two, panicking once they decide they want to change their major. And so here's a great example of someone who's changed their major 6 times, still graduated on time, and has still built a successful career. And all of the courses and the majors that you entertained have become very relevant to your day to day now and how you interact with the various clients. So it ends up coming full circle.
The 4-year liberal arts college system that the US has essentially created for itself, um, it helps, but it's also a disadvantage because it
Mhm.
forces students to think this is what I should be doing. It's not what you should be doing. There is no knowledge of what you should and shouldn't be doing. There's only what you do.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, if you're not enjoying it, you really shouldn't be doing it because you only get one shot at this thing called life. There are ways of being more successful with all of the experience that you have accumulated to date. And as I love to tell my students when I was teaching in college and mentoring students, I said, if you have slept a normal amount and have been awake for a normal amount during your lifetime, you have accumulated the same amount of knowledge as everyone else at your
Mhm.
stage. It's not a matter of whether you're an expert in one area or another. It's a matter of what you do with the knowledge that you've accumulated. And you can
Mhm.
choose to not use it at all, or you can choose to integrate it. And so, my advice to college students is don't worry so much about whether you're in the right major. Don't worry so much about whether you've graduated on time. Worry more about what you do with the knowledge that you've had. And another piece of advice associated with that I give to college students: you're not in college to get grades. You're not in
Mhm.
college to get that A in every single class. You're in college to get the credentials, to get the low paying internships that give you the experience to determine what you don't want to do and what you do want to do. I thought I was going to be a physics major. I got an internship at NASA. Whenever I tell that to somebody, they're like, "Oh my god, you had an internship at NASA." And my response is I hated it.
Mhm.
I'm glad that I did it because I learned what I did not like, and
Mhm.
that made me change paths. I still use the knowledge, but I'm glad that I was able to experience that. So when somebody says, should I go to college or not? And the answer is not always yes. Some people genuinely should be working in the field that they want to before college, like, try to get a little bit of experience and figure out what is best for them. But the advantage of going to college and experimenting with different classes is that you can use that to sell yourself for the low paying internships that give you the on the job experience so that when you get out of college, they look at those internships and they say, yep, we want you. You're going to learn more on the job. But nobody takes a look at your coursework and says, oh, you are an A plus student. That's why we're going to hire you. Nobody cares about that. Everybody just
Mhm.
cares about the experience that you've gotten in internships. The internships might care if you're an A plus student. So don't fail all of your classes, but you're not in college to get good grades. You're in college to get on the ground experience at these low paying internships that then will land you a job afterwards.
Mhm. Aaron, you know what's so special about you is that
I don't
here
know.
you are landing a NASA internship as a physics major at the time. And some physics majors are drooling over that opportunity you had that they didn't get. And you closed that chapter of the book and opened a new one. And so, what I find so empowering about that is that society's perception of what was successful and great, you listen to your inner voice and what was successful and great for you, which meant a transition, a change of tact. So, I applaud that, and that's part of what I do in coaching is helping people hear and listen to their inner voice above all else.
Yeah.
So we ended at the college point. So you've graduated college. What did the milestones after that look like? And just briefly, we'll dive in deeper in a bit.
Sure. I loved research. I mean, I don't remember most of my classes, and I don't mean to say that I like played around in college or anything. I just like I don't think that any student really remembers a whole lot of their coursework 10, 15, 20 years from when they graduate. What they generally do remember is the experiences that they've had. And I had a fantastic time doing research. So when I got out of college, I knew that I wanted to do research. And I knew that I wanted to go to graduate school. I skipped over a master's because I knew that I wanted to do research. I had already identified a set of professors. The REU that I was working on, that's the person that I eventually went to work with for my graduate degree. I never looked back. I loved doing research. Now, I will say, 3 years into graduate school, I think I went through a healthy 2 week period where I wanted to quit everything and just
Hmm.
open up a brewery or winery. Like I love doing that stuff as a hobby. And a lot of people in graduate school go through that period where they're just like,
Hmm.
I don't want to do this. I'm so burnt out. I don't want to do this anymore. And that's understandable. The amount of pressure that gets put on graduate students is understandable. And if you don't go through that at this point, I think you're doing something wrong. So I did. I got through it, and I thought for sure that I was going to work at what are called RO1 universities, or where the research is the priority, not teaching. They hire lecturers to do the teaching for undergraduates, and all of the professors, they do maybe like one class a year, but most of their time is spent getting grants and doing research. I thought I wanted to do that, and I actually got a postdoc uh, at Cornell University. And I thought I was at the top of my game. But I also realized how stressful it is working at RO1 universities and how much I actually like teaching. And I thought I
Hmm.
consulted with all my network of friends, and I was like, maybe I want to do the K through 12 teaching thing. I'll go back and get my teaching certificate. There's always a shortage of science teachers in the world, so I know that they needed it. Um, and I talked with my friends, and they said, if you are frustrated with administration at all in Ivy Leagues, if you're
Hmm.
frustrated with teaching at all, don't start teaching K 12 because you will last maybe 2 years before you burn out again. And I have always tried my hardest to take the advice that others give to me. I don't take any one person's advice. I ask lots of people, but the best way to learn from your past experiences is by hearing it echoed in your head from other people who are looking outside in. And I didn't go that route, but I did get a few other postdocs at smaller universities where I was still able to do some research, but I was also able to do outreach. And I changed my mindset. Instead of trying to find the professor job at an RO1 university, I was more content with a 50-50 split, not a community college, but somewhere where I could teach as well as do research at the same time. I wouldn't be like on the Harvard list of top recognized professors anytime soon, but I would have a fulfilling life and career where I could do both research and teaching. Um, I got a job so I was at a postdoc in Michigan, and I did another postdoc in upstate New York, at Rensselaer Polytechnic. Um, and I enjoyed myself a lot doing these postdocs. I
Mhm.
think I applied to maybe 100 different university positions over the course of
Mhm.
2.5 years. I definitely screwed up some interviews, and that's okay. No one is good at interviews in that first interview. Everybody screws up something. Um, Eventually, I found a job at a small, mid-size, like 10,000 student institution where I could do both research and teaching. And I thought I was doing great until it became very clear that I was working about 70% of my time doing teaching.
Mhm.
Another 70% of my time was doing research, and about 30% of my time was doing outreach. And I was working close to 70 or 80 hours a week,
Mhm.
not getting paid for that much. And even if I was, that's not a sustainable career. And
Mhm.
so I burnt out in a dumpster fire flame of glory.
Mhm.
Um, I departed the university, didn't know what I wanted to do. I actually worked at a coffee shop as a barista for a couple of months while I regrouped. I might have been the only person in the state of New Jersey that held a PhD while making minimum wage at a coffee shop. And actually, that's not true. As I talk with more and more people who have gone through that academic burnout, I find that a
Mhm.
lot of people took jobs, like mundane jobs, working at, retail places while they figured out their
Mhm.
next step. And I thought it was great, and I enjoyed myself. I like making coffee. I like drinking coffee. I like making people happy and drinking coffee at the same time. But I knew it wasn't a sustainable career unless I opened my own coffee shop, and I wasn't ready for that. So uh, I found a job working for the state of New Jersey at the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. I was a research scientist, and it was fulfilling in the sense that I got to learn some of the more policy related aspects of environmental science. It was less than fulfilling because it's a state job, and I think that at any state job, there's just not the fast paced nature of working in academia. It's a very slower paced atmosphere. You're
Mhm.
very meticulous in everything, and it takes a long time. There was also something interesting that I experienced working at the state level that's not unique to New Jersey in the slightest. It's just, it happens to be the nature of how our country works. I would be working on something and I would have to pass it off to the attorneys for their review. And they were like, yeah, this looks good. Just keep your computer at work and don't delete anything. And I said, well, why? And they were like, well, because there's a good chance that we'll be sued over this. And as an ecologist, somebody who has only been working to save the environment, to me, that just didn't make any sense. Why would anyone sue me? Like little old me, I'm just trying to protect the environment here. Why would anyone sue me? Um, and like I thought, well, they must be evil if they're suing me about saving the environment. And that couldn't be farther from the truth, right? Businesses need to push back on environmental measures so that we can all come to this mutual agreed upon sustainable future.
Mhm.
But I didn't really understand how the other side of the courtroom, so to speak, worked. I never actually went to a courtroom while I was working for the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. I just didn't understand what was happening on the other side. I was handing
Mhm.
over parcels of, I was handing over reports, and they went out into the ether, and I just vaguely understood that there was going to be contention over them. And so I told myself that if there was the opportunity to see what was happening on the other side, I would take it. And lo and behold, this company that some people might have heard of called Exxon, ExxonMobil, sorry,
Mhm.
they merged. This company that people might have heard of called ExxonMobil sent out an advertisement for an applied ecologist position, and I submitted my application. Couldn't hurt. I wasn't didn't cost me anything to submit the application, and they said, yeah, we want to bring you in for an interview. And I went in, and I was so surprised to find an academic crew that had outpublished me, that had went to the best universities, that knew their stuff, that was continuing to publish, working inside of this industry that for the longest part of my life, and most other ecologists that I talk to, is this evil devil of a company. And
Hmm.
I was like, well, I asked them, because I had no idea. I asked them during the interview, I had no idea. Are you going to ask me to write and do things that go against my scientific upbringing? And they said, absolutely not. We're hiring you because you're a scientist, because we need your expertise. We don't know ecology. You do. And so we're bringing you in to help us. And it's true. That's what happened. They wanted to hear what I had to say. They gave me plenty of opportunities to present to non-ecologists in the company as well as outside the company, to go on conferences, and they never asked me to do anything that went against my morals. And I think I have pretty good morals. Um, and then I got wind that the company was shuffling some people around, and they wanted me to move to Houston. And that is the downside of working for a private entity, is that they can kind of do what they want with their employees. Most businesses can, but it's more so in private industry. You know, they need to make money. And if they decide that you are a hindrance to making money, if you don't do something, then they can say, well, see you later. So I decided I didn't want to move where they wanted me to move. I wanted to stick around where I currently am for at least a little bit longer. And I got a job as a consultant working for a company called Exponent. And that's where I am now. All the
Hmm.
while, I still connected with my academic society, the Ecological Society of America. They accepted me despite the fact that I work for this gigantic oil and gas conglomerate. To most ecologists, the company would not be viewed favorably.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but the Ecological Society of America continued to welcome me in, and continued to engage me, and offered me a chance to be on their meetings committee, offered me a chance to be on to be the section chair of the private and public ecologist section. And so I still have these fundamental grassroots in ecology that I've stuck with since graduating from undergraduate. And it's just trailed with me my entire career. And so I'm not upset with all of these career transitions. I embrace it. I can say that I've worked across 4 different career sectors between
Hmm.
academia, government, industry, consulting. I probably have to transition to working for a nonprofit at some point, just so I round it all out.
Yep.
Not that I'm actively trying to leave or anything. I think that I've been incredibly fortunate to have all of these varied experiences.
Mm, absolutely. I mean, what a journey. This next question might be hard given that journey, but what advice would you give someone interested in pursuing the career that you're in now as a consultant?
So, for my particular consulting group, most of who they hire happen to be doctorates. And that's
Mm.
not usual for a lot of consulting firms. When I was teaching at the university and mentoring students, I mentored about 40 students a semester, and I co-coordinated the professional science master's degree. And so I advised a lot of students on what they wanted to do. And a lot of students did go off into consulting right out of undergraduate, or they went and got a professional science master's degree. Not that traditional master's where you do research with a professor, but a professional degree where you take classes and maybe you'll do a
Mhm.
capstone project. Those are really valuable. Some of them maybe less so than others, but a lot of them are really valuable for finding a job and not paying an arm and a leg. And the students that I advised along this pathway were getting great careers as entry level consultants, unfortunately making just a little bit less than I was making as a tenure track professor. Um, and they rose through the ranks. And so now a lot of them are mid level or senior level consultants. And they find it really rewarding. I came to consulting later on. Um, I did not think that I would do consulting after getting my doctorate, simply because most firms don't hire doctorates
Mm,
as consultants. It's fairly rare. And so if a student does want to do consulting, do not get a doctorate.
mm,
The only thing you should get is a master's. You can get a doctorate later on, but do not get a doctorate before starting out in consulting. It Getting a doctorate displaces you from getting a lot of different jobs, right? It makes it much more of a challenge because everybody thinks that if you have a doctorate, you have to get paid a lot of money. So it's not impossible to get a entry level consulting job after getting your doctorate, but you do have to do a little bit more creative selling in your resume and in your cover letter to explain, I thought I wanted to do this. I now think I want to regroup. And you got to word it carefully, because now they're going to be like, well, why did you want to get your doctorate? Now you don't like your doctorate. You want to go to consulting. Are you going to hate consulting in a couple of years and want to switch to something else? You have to jump through a few more hurdles. And I am really grateful to the company that I'm at now that they are giving me this chance to go into a field that I didn't know of beforehand, that I didn't really know how to do beforehand, and gain that experience in a comforting and supportive environment.
mm. Thank you so much for that advice, Aaron.